Have you ever paused to wonder how much the president of a European country actually earns? Not just any European country, but one with over 1,000 years of history, a seat in the European Union, and a strong post-communist economy. Well, Poland, yes, Poland, recently made headlines when it was revealed that its president earns approximately $70,000 a year. That figure turned heads globally, not because it's high, but because it's relatively modest by global leadership standards. And that got us thinking, how does this compare to presidents in Africa? At first glance, you might assume African presidents would earn less. After all, many African nations are still classified as developing economies, with large portions of their populations living below the poverty line and struggling with issues like inflation, debt, and unemployment. But here's where things take a surprising twist. Several African leaders earn significantly more than Poland's head of state, some even by margins that seem hard to justify when you consider the broader economic picture. Let's dive into this fascinating and sometimes uncomfortable comparison that highlights more than just numbers. It reveals stark contrasts in leadership styles, priorities, and public accountability between Africa and Europe. Let's begin with the leader who tops this list, Paul Biya, the long-serving president of Cameroon. Biya has been in power since 1982, over 4 decades now. He is the highest-paid African president, with an official salary of over $620,000 annually. That's nearly 9 times what the Polish president makes. This jaw-dropping figure has raised numerous questions both inside and outside Cameroon. While Biya maintains that his leadership has brought stability to the country, critics point to mounting debt, corruption scandals, and a worsening Anglophone crisis. It begs the question, is that salary really a reflection of national service or a symbol of unchecked executive power? Now let's cross over to North Africa, where King Mohammed VI of Morocco holds court. His salary, which sits at $488,000 per year, doesn't even account for the royal budget that funds the vast Moroccan monarchy, including palaces, travel, and ceremonial expenses. Though Morocco is relatively stable and growing economically, the king's wealth is enormous compared to most citizens, yet the monarchy maintains a strong hold on governance and national identity, with many seeing the king not just as a political leader, but a spiritual and historical figure. Traveling south, we find Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa, earning a solid $223,500 annually. South Africa has one of the largest and most industrialized economies on the continent, and in that context, Ramaphosa's salary might appear justifiable. However, even here, public outcry over political privilege, service delivery failures, and deepening inequality make his income a point of contention. It's worth noting that he voluntarily took a pay cut during the COVID-19 pandemic, something that may show a contrast in responsiveness compared to other leaders. William Ruto, president of Kenya, follows with an estimated annual salary between $150,000 and $190,000. Ruto's rise has been accompanied by a message of economic transformation, but his administration, like many before it, has been heavily scrutinized for spending and governance decisions. In a country where job creation is a daily topic of debate and the cost of living continues to climb, such a high salary puts pressure on leaders to deliver tangible results. Then there's Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, earning over $183,000 per year. Museveni has led Uganda since 1986, making him one of Africa's longest-serving presidents. His government has been accused of authoritarianism, election manipulation, and crackdowns on dissent. Meanwhile, Uganda remains one of the poorest nations in East Africa. The comparison to Poland, where leadership is limited by democratic checks and public transparency, brings into focus the very different expectations placed on leaders in Africa versus Europe. Algeria's president, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, reportedly earns $168,000 a year. Algeria has a strong energy sector, yet high youth unemployment and widespread dissatisfaction with governance persist. Similarly, Teodoro Obiangwema, of Equatorial Guinea earns over $150,000 annually. Despite the country's oil wealth, most citizens live in poverty, while the ruling family has been repeatedly accused of enriching themselves at the public's expense. Here, leadership seems less about service and more about control. Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa earns roughly $146,000 a year despite the country's economic struggles, persistent inflation, and public sector wage disputes. Meanwhile, in the Comoros, a tiny archipelago nation, President Azali Assoumani earns $115,000 annually, a figure that seems disproportionately high when you consider the country's size and GDP. Finally, Namibia's President Hage Geingob and his successor Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah are said to earn between $96,000 and $108,000 per year. Namibia is relatively peaceful and democratic, and in this case the salary is not outrageously high, but still, it surpasses that of Poland's president. Now, let's step back and analyze this. Why do leaders of nations with significantly lower GDPs, weaker public service structures, and rampant poverty earn more than those in more economically stable European countries? The answer lies not just in economics, but in political culture. In Europe, particularly in countries like Poland, political leadership is bound by democratic norms, active media scrutiny, and public accountability. Salary structures are often restrained by public pressure and institutional checks. In contrast, many African nations have centralized executive power, weaker oversight mechanisms, and deeply rooted patronage networks. Leaders often enjoy not only high salaries, but massive allowances, perks, and informal wealth through control of state resources. It reflects a broader leadership culture, one where prestige and power often take precedence over service and transparency. It's not just about the paycheck. It's about what that paycheck represents. In Europe, modest political salaries can signal humility, public service, and fiscal responsibility. In Africa, large salaries often signal authority, untouchability, and a culture of leadership that prizes opulence over accountability. This comparison isn't meant to shame, it's meant to spark conversation. What does leadership mean in today's world? Should public office be a pathway to wealth or a responsibility to serve? Should presidents of developing nations earn more than those of advanced economies? And more importantly, how do citizens hold their leaders accountable when salaries are just the tip of the iceberg? These are questions worth asking, not just in Africa or Europe, but globally. Because leadership isn't about what you earn, it's about what you give, how you lead, and whether your people trust you to serve their interests before your own. If you found this video insightful, thought-provoking, or even a little uncomfortable, that's the point. Here at Immigrant Paths, we explore the complex intersections of politics, identity, migration, and power across the globe. We don't just share facts, we connect them to the bigger picture. So if you're someone who believes that understanding the world starts with asking bold questions, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive. This is Immigrant Paths, where global stories find human meaning. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay informed.